In this lesson, you're going to learn all about blocks. You'll learn what they are, where they come from, and how to work with blocks. Now, you may have heard Gutenberg referred to as a block editor. Until you've worked with Gutenberg, it's not really clear what that means. Blocks are the foundation of the Gutenberg editing experience, and this lesson will inform all of our future Gutenberg training. So, if you watch no other lesson, watch this one. First, let's demystify blocks. Blocks are really just chunks of content. Now, that could be a paragraph of text, it could be an audio file, it could be a photo gallery, possibly even a video. Or it could be something more dynamic, like a list of posts, and you use blocks to build up your web pages and your posts. In this course, we're going to learn about the standard blocks that are built into Gutenberg, and those blocks are available to any WordPress website that's using the Gutenberg editor. But Gutenberg was created in a way that allows programmers and designers to extend and expand available blocks. Blocks can also be added through the block directory. That's built into Gutenberg, and we'll take a look at that in this tutorial. Blocks are also added by plugins or themes. So it's entirely possible that you might have access to additional blocks besides the standard blocks we're looking at in this course. The number of blocks is growing. Much like plugins, because blocks really are a special kind of plugin, there is no limit. We're going to see an explosion of blocks in the coming years. Now let's jump into WordPress and take a closer look at blocks and how they work. So we're on my test website, and we're looking at a post that I created with the Gutenberg block editor. And you can see that there are a few images there. There's an image gallery at the bottom, an image floating off to the side, and 3 paragraphs of text. I see a bunch of blocks. There are 5 blocks used on this page, 5 Gutenberg blocks. Let's jump in to WordPress and take a look at how this page was composed and how the blocks were used to set up this particular layout. I'm going to click Edit Post. And now I'm in WordPress. And it looks very much like it did on the page. One of the things you will notice is that unlike the classic editor, the Gutenberg editor is designed to inherit the styling of the theme that you're using. So the background color is the same as the background color on my web page. The font for the title is the same as the font on my web page. So let's go through this page and see how these blocks are combined and how they work. First of all, I want to point out this top one here, Meet Gutenberg Blocks. That's not a block. That is the title. That is the post title. Every post has a title. You can't remove it unless you've got a plugin to remove your title, but you'll have to enter a title so you can identify the post, and that's what appears at the top of the post when you publish it on your website. But below that title, we've got a bunch of blocks. And you will see that as I click into each one of these paragraphs, a toolbar is hovering over the paragraph. That is the toolbar for the paragraph block. And in fact, the thing you can gather from this is that every paragraph is a separate block. So I can use the Move control. That's one of the toolbar control options to move up and down. I could use that to move paragraphs around on my page. And off to the right, I've got an image block. And then down at the bottom, I've got an image gallery block, which is a block that displays multiple images and gives me a lot of control over how those images can be organized. Now, those are the blocks in the page, and we'll spend some more time looking at the details of how blocks work and how you can move blocks around to build your page. Let's spend a little bit of time looking at the editing interface here. There's a toolbar across the top that gives you some additional control over what's going on in your page. You've got the Tools option, which allows you to go into Edit mode or Select mode. So I've been in Edit mode, which means I can click my icon anywhere and start editing, like you would edit a page of text. But if I go into Select mode, that allows me to click blocks, I should say, and just activate them. And from there, I can open up the sidebar and adjust the color settings and the size settings. The difference is I won't accidentally edit something. Next to the tools option, you've got undo and redo. That works just like it would in any other application. So if you're working on your page and you do something with a block and everything goes haywire, you can do undo to go back to a previous step. You can do multiple steps of undo to get back to a previous step. So if something goes wrong, remember that tool. We've got the information icon that tells you how many words are on the page, how many headings and paragraphs and blocks, just some metrics on the content. And then we've got the block navigation. As your pages get more complex, made up of more blocks and nested blocks, it can be very challenging to find the right thing on your page and select it. The block navigation gives you kind of a hierarchy of all of the different blocks that are on the page, and you can then jump right to one of those elements if you need to. You can navigate quickly to a specific block that you might want to work with. So if you've got a very long page with a lot of blocks, that's a good way to find a specific block to start working on. Block navigation. Now I skipped over this plus. We're going to get back to the plus. That's the add block menu. That actually adds a whole sidebar listing all of the different blocks. We don't need to use up all of this screen real estate, but sometimes it's nice to be able to see all of your options on one screen without having to look at a tiny little box hovering over your content, which is the other option that we'll take a look at in a second. Off to the right, we've got this gear, which is your settings menu for the post that you're in, and that reveals a panel on the right that has two tabs. There's the document tab that lists specific things related to the document, like the publication date, the permalinks, the categories and tags, featured images. These are things we get into in other lessons, kind of the WordPress settings. And then there's the block tab. That gives you all of the specific settings you can use for the block that is active. So you'll see as I highlight different blocks, the block setting panel on the right changes with options that are relevant to the block that I've highlighted. And that allows me then to make changes. So there's a style setting for this image. Right now I'm looking at the square image. I could go ahead and change that to a rounded image, and you'll see that the image is cropped and it's rounded. So that style control can be very important. There are a lot of options, and the options that are available really depend on which block is active. A lot of people like to turn that off when they're just building their web page. You get a cleaner interface that looks more like a web page, and you can continue just building your page out of blocks. Let's take a look at how you would add blocks to your page. I've got a bunch of blocks on my page. One way to add a block is just to go to the bottom, and the final block should be a paragraph automatically. You can just start typing. That's fine if what you want to add is a paragraph of text. If you want something else, you can click this plus, which is the Add Block button. Click that, and you'll see a few options here, a paragraph and buttons and images and a few other. That's great if those are the elements you want to add, but what if you want to add an audio file? Well, you could search. Just type in audio, for example, or search for whatever it is you want to add. And then I get a list of blocks that are related to audio, and I can select one of those and add it right where that block is positioned below the gallery. What if I want to browse all of my blocks to see what they look like, to get a better idea of what I'm looking for? I could click the Browse All link at the bottom of this menu, and that opens up the block sidebar that we were looking at just a second ago. And this is a more complete list of blocks that are installed on my system, and you'll see they're grouped. There's a header across the top. These are all the text-related blocks. These are all the media-related blocks and design-related blocks, and it goes on. There are several categories. We get into these as we get deeper into this Gutenberg Essentials course. Now, one nice thing about this block directory on the side is that as you hover over, you see a demonstration, a thumbnail image to the right that gives you an idea of what the block is going to look like. So this block quote, for example, you can see what a block quote will look like. You can see what a pull quote will look like. You get an idea what your table will look like. So if you're not quite sure how something is going to be presented, you get a pretty good idea by looking at that thumbnail when you hover over the block in this block sidebar. Not everything has a preview. For example, this audio has no preview. That makes sense. Audio's kind of hard to preview in a thumbnail image. Some other blocks may not have thumbnails, but most of them do. So this is a good way to find your block. You could actually scroll through all of them and pick one you want and then click it, and then it gets added. I just added a page break block. Now, if you just want to type and type text on your page, you don't need to add blocks. You just type the way you would normally type, and when I press enter at the end of a paragraph, I can just start typing, and that's automatically in its own paragraph block. And you could do that for a whole page, and your page would just be made up of paragraph blocks. There's nothing wrong with that. People like to read. And then each one of your paragraphs would have its own paragraph-wide toolbar floating over the top. So if I wanted to change this to center alignment, I could click this alignment icon in the toolbar and do center. And then, of course, I can style with things like bold and italic. So just hitting the Enter key or the Return key when you're through with a paragraph allows you to keep typing. Another way to add a block is to select a block and then click the More menu, which is this ellipsis-looking menu at the end here, and you get this drop-down menu that is Additional Tools, and you've got the option to insert before and insert after. So that would insert a block before or after this particular block that I've activated. So if I want to insert something before, so I've got a space in between these two paragraphs, and then I've got my block selector off to the right here, Add Block, and then I could go ahead and add a button right there. And so that button has been positioned between these two paragraph blocks. So you've added a block and you're looking at your page and you realize it's not quite right. The block you added and spent all that time working on should have been a different block. Let's take a look at how you would change a block. So I've got this line of text right here. This is a paragraph block. And the toolbar is hovering over it with the obvious formatting things. What you may not realize is this first block is this first toolbar option is the Change Block Type button. So if I click that open, I see that I can transform this paragraph to any one of these other blocks that are similarly organized. Like these are all text blocks or text-related blocks. So the option to transform would be appropriate for the type of media in the block that you're trying to transform. So I can choose any of these text-related ones. So if I want to make it a heading, I can click Heading. And then I have all the heading controls. If I want to make it, change it back to a paragraph. If I want to make it pull quote, for example, there's the pull quote formatting. So the idea is you can get close enough with your block selection in the beginning, and if you decide later on that it's not quite the right block, you can always change it later. And with all of your content reduced to individual blocks on a page, it's only natural that you'll need to move things around from time to time. We've looked at that a bit in this tutorial. Let me show you another way to move your blocks around. So previously I showed you that when you highlight a block, activate it, you've got this option here in the toolbar. The up and down arrows allow you to move the block around. So you can do that. But you can also just click that Change Block Type, hold your mouse button down and drag. And you see when I do that, I can literally just drag that block anywhere else on the page. So I can rearrange that way. Click and drag. Just to be complete with your block controls here, we need to take a look at how you would remove a block. Nothing can be more frustrating than seeing that thing on your page that you want to get rid of and not being able to figure out how to get rid of it. So let me show you how to delete a block. So I've got this pull quote here, and I've highlighted this block, and I see the block menu floating over it. And the More Options menu hides most of the things you can't find in Gutenberg. So that's a good place to go if you're looking lost. And one of the things it hides is the Remove Block option. I'm going to go ahead and click Remove Block. and then it's deleted from my page. Now that being said, if you want a more direct route, you can just select the block you want to get rid of and press your delete key. That works too. So we're almost ready to wrap up this introduction to Gutenberg block basics. Before I do, I want to show you how to find new blocks. You've got a lot of blocks to choose from, but there are more blocks out there and more blocks every day. There's a block directory that allows you to find and install blocks, and it's built right into Gutenberg. Let's take a look. So I've got the block sidebar. I'm going to click the plus to open it up. And if I want to search for something, that's the best way to find blocks because there are so many blocks, even with the unaugmented, just the standard WordPress installation of Gutenberg. There are so many blocks. To find the block you're looking for, you always have to search. But what if that block doesn't exist? Well, the way the Gutenberg search function works is there's a block directory search function built in. It's mixed in with the regular block search. Let me show you what I mean. For example, let's say I want to put a pricing table. It's a very specific kind of design element. I want to put a pricing table into my page. I don't know if I've got a pricing table or not. I don't think I have a pricing table. It's not a standard WordPress Gutenberg block. So let me search for pricing. So instead of seeing the pricing table block that I thought I might have but realize I don't, I'm seeing search results from the Gutenberg block directory. These are pricing table blocks that are available for me to add. And instead of having to go out and install a plugin and come back, and I could just do it from here. So I want to add this pricing table block, click Add Block. Now this pricing table widget has been added to my collection of Gutenberg blocks. I can use this on other posts and pages. And then off to the right, you see that the pricing table block has been added to my page. And I can then go ahead and use the tools. I can open up the sidebar and see the additional settings. And there are hundreds, soon to be thousands, I'm sure, of blocks available this way. Just by searching for a specific type of layout or design concept that you want to add to your page, you can find Gutenberg blocks that are available through the block directory for free. That's one way to do it. Now, one thing I need to show you here, one thing you need to be aware of, you may not realize it, but when you're doing that, every time you add a new block that way, you are installing a new plugin. So I've got the price table block plugin has been added to my WordPress installation. Some people are very careful about the number of plugins they install. You should be aware that if you're installing a lot of blocks through Gutenberg, you might be installing a lot of plugins too. So just something to be aware of. I would suggest turning on the auto updates at the very least. So a lot of Gutenberg block concepts presented in this video. The best thing for you to do is to get out there and start experimenting with Gutenberg. And hopefully after watching this video, you'll have the confidence to do just that.